So, welcome, Mikaela. I'm so delighted to have you on Meet Me in the Mushroom. This is a conversation that I have been very excited to have. And I know a lot of my female friends are really, really happy that we are having this conversation tonight. This morning, tonight, we're in different parts of the planet here. You're in San Diego, I believe.
Yes, we're in San Diego here.
And I'm meeting you tonight from Cape Town, South Africa. So we're in a 10-hour difference, and we're going to connect the two spaces and have a lovely exploration through everything from psilocybin journeys, personal journey with it, and psychedelic motherhood, and touching into cultural aspects and ancestral celebration, community celebration through our conversation this evening. So thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. It's been a long time coming, so I'm glad we were able to get together finally in such a beautiful platform in the mushroom. So let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. And we're here, it's actually the eve of the full moon. So beautiful, beautiful time for two women, two sisters to be coming together and journeying in this way. So
And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just wanted to articulate also that it is going to be the longest lunar eclipse as well than we've had in 500 years and will not have for another 1,000. So it's a very auspicious time.
wow, yeah, I'm just sitting with that for a minute. Just wow. Big change coming.
Yes, there's a lot happening even here in California, as I was mentioning before, just with some legislation moving through, and we're in the early stages of a legalization, a decriminalization document that is moving through, the California governance system to potentially, make what I do and what so many of my beloved friends and family have committed themselves to do, and bring it into a space that won't get us incarcerated, which is a really it's overwhelming to think that we're coming into a time where I don't have to like live in fear of what I've been speaking about for years. And so that's very exciting and also a little bit nerve-wracking because the initiative has some really big money behind it. So we've had a lot of lessons to be learned with cannabis, and we do not want to see entheogens go this way. So it's a divided issue at this time, but as you said, big changes are coming.
Yeah, exciting, exciting revelations in the state of California to be part of this community and to be, I guess, a holder of certain principles, especially when there is such big movement around psychedelics and these types of voices, women's voices, persons of color, indigenous people, First Nations people, and finding these voices and creating spaces for these voices is critical right now.
Most definitely. We can't have this conversation without the voices of the people that are impacted by these medicines most and have the long history of being in relationship with them. We can't consult peyote conservation without the Wirarika and without the many Plains Indians that live here, and we can't consult peyote conservation without talking to the folks that have been detribalized, like myself and my father's family. And that's part of the importance of doing ancestor work as well, is remembering what our birthrights are and remembering and knowing innately that we do have rights, to our land. We do have rights to our medicines. And even if I'm not 100% native or have a hard time tracing, where my lineage comes from to the exact village, because my grandmother was kidnapped by the Catholic Church and, given to a Spanish family, does not disqualify me from the conversation. So that's been a really important piece. And your lineage with your ancestry in Ireland also has a stake with psilocybin mushrooms by way of the Celts, by way of also the Druids having a rich tradition using the Amanita muscaria mushroom and other mushrooms as well. So, if we really think critically about this, almost every person has an ancestor who took plant medicine. That's how we are who we are. The plants and the medicine came first, and the humans came later, and that's the truth.
That is a very potent truth. And this concept, this cultural concept that has been dominating Western psyche, this monotheistic cultural perspective, when we are on the whole a planet that's polytheistic in its knowing, there's multiple knowings of how to interact with spirit, with animals, with plants, with consciousness. There's multiple dimensions of consciousness. And we're stepping forward at a really exciting time to reclaim that indigenous birthright that we feel very much in our body and in our soul. And I had this conversation recently because I moved to the UK when I was 4, and I don't speak my mother tongue. And I mean, we were anglicized by the British, and we lost our mother tongue. And there's a big movement in Ireland now to reclaim Gaelic identity. But for me, it sometimes brings up shame that I can't speak my mother tongue, but yet I position myself as a Gaelic indigenous, woman who works with, as a wise woman who works with psilocybin. And that knowingness and having to stand firm despite these labels and boxes of how are you described as a First Nation or Indigenous person, a Native person. It's an interesting time to navigate this.
There's been a big talk about decolonizing our consciousness. And I really also, on the other side of decolonization, is indigenizing ourselves. And I really love the work that you're doing to remember your mother language and your mother tongue, and to allow your mind to shape itself and mold itself again, even in the small, words that you're learning. And, psilocybin has really helped me get a grasp on some of these languages that I've lost also. And singing, songs in Nahuatl and songs in Spanish, and even listening to Italian, which my mother speaks fluently. She's a daughter of the land. She was born and raised on a spit of land in Italy, and was taken from there and moved to the big city when she was 11 years old. So, I mean, she's still very much a land-based person, and an indigenous person of Italy, where she, was born and raised. And being with psilocybin and allowing those connections to be made in the brain, that's also something really interesting. Microdosing and incorporating meaningful activity and study and this ancestor work, it really helps to create the neurology and to really open up the roadmap a little bit more, to place markers in the brain, to explore, unlocked DNA and things like that, and learning our mother tongues, our languages, with the help of psilocybin. It is such a linguistic. It's probably how most of us developed language in the very beginning. So it's really helpful to bring us back into, the knowledge of the musculature of our mouth and the way that needs to move in order to pronounce these words, because English, has its own set of muscles that we can use. There's no glottal stops, there's no clicking, things like that. And I love that you are claiming your indigeneity, as a Gaelic speaking, indigenous woman of that region, because we need people remembering and not creating separations of, well, you're a white woman and you don't know anything about indigeneity, but certainly we all do because we're all indigenous to somewhere. So I bow to you. Thank you so much for bringing up this side of the conversation, because the power structure has harmed everything on the planet. Even the people who impose the harm are now, suffering as a result of what, has been created. And so part of, the decolonization, the indigenizing process now is, as you're saying, to recognize the theology, the God, the spirit in all things. And when you recognize the God and the spirit in all things, you can't harm it. You worship the river, you cannot pollute it. You worship the tree, and you can't cut it down, and that is something that earth-based religions and the old-time religion and the earth-based faiths were so excellent at, was helping remind people how sacred this land was. And I'm really not in the camp these days of the ascension camp, the new age ascension camp. Like, we're just trying to get out of here. Let's just go to the next, the next realm. I'm like, this is such a beautiful place. And we can bring, the vibration, the being on earth into such that it looks like heaven here as it had in the past. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. My ancestors are just telling me to stay. My ancestors are in the ground. Your ancestors are in the ground. That's the ancestor realm. The ancestor realm ain't up here. It's below our feet. It's in the soil. That's the underworld. It's the soil. It's the mycelium. It's like the worms and the creepy crawlies that are composting to produce, resurrect life, resurrect food. That's the story of Krishna, of Christ, is, buried, right? And rose 3 days later. Like, this is the story of fruiting crops. This is the story of food. This is the story of Mother Earth and the seeds that bring forth life. So, there's no reason to exit, because everything we have is here.
Wow, I mean, yes, we really speak the same language. So it just my face is beaming right now because it's an interesting space to navigate, keeping the rootedness and bringing that message of grounded spirituality, of, indigenous, earth-based magic. And it's so real, it's so palpable, it's so powerful. And to just help each other remember the way back down. And thankfully, we have these incredible plant allies and these plant teachers that are they're just here to help us remember our way back in. I'd love to know a little bit about how you came into the psychedelic realm, or the entheogenic realm, should I say?
Yes. So I had the privilege of going to college, and I met a young man by the name of Jesse Tannenbaum, who asked me if I'd ever taken LSD before. And at that time, I'd only had tried, well, actually, I tried a few different substances by that point, but namely cannabis, which is definitely a plant medicine, entheogen for sure. Even a psychedelic and a hallucinogen certainly had a strong effect on me. And also MDMA. I had already had MDMA by the time I got into college. And I also had my stint with opiates. I was addicted to opiates when I was 13. So I was going through some struggles in my teenage life. And so, much of my life before the entheogens it was wrought with suffering. I really just didn't feel in place. I felt like everything about where I was living was not a good fit. I had trouble, connecting, making friends in a genuine way. It'd been, especially the sister wound. I think we all have a sister wound somewhere where we've been betrayed by a dear friend. And that had happened a few times. I felt very cut off from letting people in and trusting and really loving and caring about myself. So when this man, Jesse, we were freshmen in college, asked me to hike up a mountain with him and to take a tab of acid. He's from this place called the Bay Area, and the Bay Area is a real hyphy place. So it's a lot of like booty bass and like real street dope music. And so he trips that for me, that first experience. And it changed my life forever. I mean, anyone who's done LSD and had a, safe and full experience would tell you that it lends you a completely new set of eyes for which to look at every moment of your life in reflection, with a new perspective. I'd lost my father, and I was able to look at that in a new way that totally freed me from the trauma tale, the story of the things that happened to me, and all the suffering that comes with that. And I got to kind of flip the script a little bit and say, wow, but look at how much I've grown and look at how much I know. And everyone dies. I'm not special. I'm not like this odd case where a 13-year-old child loses their dad. I'm like, there's millions of us. So, I walked down that mountain, a completely changed individual, and sought out that level of healing. Was situated in maybe having another experience. But what I found after that was psilocybin. And the first time I took psilocybin, I was convinced that I found my home planet. Yeah. And my home frame of reference. I'd been programmed through, the Catholic and the Christian church and told everything that now I know gives me power, that, everything that I cared about was demonic and that should not be explored or, taken in as truth. And so psilocybin actually helped me kind of deprogram from Catholicism and helped me realize that there's DNA in me that knows this medicine, that there's DNA in me that is so comfortable and so safe and feels very much at home there. I felt very at home. And pretty much for the first time, I was a wandering child just looking for a place to belong. And in the mushroom was where I belonged. So I continued seeking that out for a long time. And along the way, saw a lot of opportunities where people were maybe trying medicine and needed some insight, needed a little extra push, go ahead and try it. It's safe. It's okay, or here's the best ways to not just do harm reduction, but to like optimize benefit. My friend Charlotte from Ancestral Project says it all the time, that the indigenous, context for taking medicine and being in a relationship with medicine is to optimize the benefit as opposed to reduce the harm. So I started to learn how to optimize experiences for myself. And then I just shared that openly with the people that I was coming in contact with. And very shortly after my first experience, I was already taking care of people through their experiences. It's so innate to sit for one another. So many of us are natural born, journey sitters. So many of us already have it within us because we've been doing it forever. So, that's just it. I mean, when I figured it out, oh, this is it. This is my calling. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. And that was almost 10 years ago. So here we are, after 10 years of learning, and still have much, much more to go. But I got great teachers along the way. My womb care teacher, Star Lily Sister Nova, I give her thanks and praise for initiating me into the Ma'at tradition and really welcomed me into my Kemetic ancestry and the ancient Egyptian lineage, which there's also instances and a rich relationship with psilocybin in ancient Egypt. So to know that was like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm seeing, these star grids. And that's why I have pyramids tattooed on me. And that's why this medicine is so everlasting in so many cultures. So to know that my Mexican ancestry led me into, the Yucatan Peninsula, and then meeting my Wirarica teacher, Teresa Chikwasochi, who, is an educator in this great organization called Getting to the Root. And I've been able to learn from her some of these indigenous ways, from her tradition, from a tribe that my grandmother was taken from. So, you know, what an amazing journey it's been. Um, and becoming a mother was the ultimate psychedelic experience. So you know that very well. And it's a blessing to hear that you also journeying with your family, because that's really part of what has made us human, is not this therapeutic model where it's one person sitting in a beautiful office in a nice comfy chair like you're some Sigmund Freud on acid. You know, we've always sat in circle around a fire overnight, you know, conversing and caring for one another, and having a place where all the family comes and the whole village comes together to learn and grow. And so that's really a system and a model that I find really beneficial for myself and my family. And hopefully, you know, for some of the people in your neighborhood, it's a way that y'all can get together and elevate, you know, come together and ground in as a community, because that's really part of the technology.
Yeah, I mean, this was what really drew me to your work and your offering when I came across you on Instagram, was that way that you so beautifully represent and share the wisdom of psychedelic motherhood, and had really brought up a lot of deep contemplation, as I had shared with you earlier, about how am I showing up as a psychedelic mother and as a psychedelic daughter, and really exploring that. And then it brought me to reflecting on the other women that I have in my life that work with psilocybin or other plant medicines, and how they're showing up with their mothers and their fathers and their siblings. And I was actually quite blown away to think this is something I was curious about through your work, and then having this huge epiphany of, wait, this is what we are actually doing. We're doing it already. And it's amazing. And I think for a lot of mothers to know that there is, like you say, you mentioned the word demonic earlier, you know, there's all of these taboos around certain things, especially with psychedelics for a lot of people at the moment. Well, it's changing, but still there is taboos. And one of them could be the relationship between psychedelics and motherhood. But yet the potential, like you spoke about, you know, your father dying and the experience you had at 13. I myself suffered from pre-adolescent depression. I was suicidal at age 12. I had a really difficult, you know, youth. But to observe, working with my own mother now, working with my daughter, and the potential that lies within that. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your reflections as being a mother and engaging with psychedelics in this way.
My gosh, my little self just holds your little self, because yeah, you and I, age 12, imagine there's just so many kids that feel like they want to leave this earth, you know. And I really hold space for that feeling of hopelessness and lack of belonging, because yeah, I didn't want to be here either. So I'm glad you made it. There's a lot of people that have made it, you know what I mean, that are still here because of these medicines finding them. So I really pray for that to proliferate far and wide, because entheogens are not just for 50-something-year-olds who have the money to pay a therapist to go sit with them and divulge all the things that have happened up until that point. No, they certainly are necessary for children who are learning to cope in environments that are not tailored to care for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That they live in trauma houses, you know, just trauma factories essentially, whereas like almost every waking moment is a fight to survive emotionally. And so to be able to destigmatize not just medicine for us as mothers and our relationship with our children and all that, but medicine for children, medicine for the youth. You know what I mean? This is an incredibly safe molecule, as safe as, I mean, I see kids chug and bang. You know what I mean? These crazy energy drinks that take such a heavy toll on your liver and just like destroy your hormone system. And the sugar is just outrageous. But, that's completely fine. But the idea of maybe giving children the tools that they need in order to cope with their environment, that being somehow a problem, is just a reflection of the current paradigm that we're all in. So, the psychedelic motherhood, this entheogenic earth medicine assisted motherhood, as I like to call it these days, is really situated in my ancestors telling me that this is probably why they were torn apart. It was probably this very thing that justified, pulling families away from one another because of these cultural differences, because of the relationship that we have with plants. I really love to give this presentation. And in the presentation, I talk about this Earth Lord. She's from the Aztec civilization, and I'm sure she's also reiterates herself in the Maya and the Olmec probably as well. But in ancient Mexico, there's a deity called Tlahtecutli, and I love Tlahtecutli. She's a bad bitch. I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss. I apologize. But she's called an Earth Lord. She's like a toad um, beast who lives kind of in the center of the earth. And she's characterized by being the teacher of the shamans. So she is who taught all of the medicine people how to make the hallucinogenic brews and how to work with psilocybin and how to work with these other plants and make manioc beer, which is a hallucinogenic beer, and how to process plants into medicine. So it's interesting because not only is she a teacher of the shamans, but she's also a midwife and she's also a mother. So in her beautiful and amazing grotesque like statues that they have, she has, the mom boobs, right? That point down. She has the rolls on her belly. And then around her ankles, she has a skull and crossbones. And you would say, oh, that's demonic. I mean, even Catholics probably who were invading the area said, oh, that's demonic. This is a demon. And really, what they didn't understand was that the skull and crossbones was a symbol of midwifery because of how delicate that tightrope between life and death is when life is coming through that sacred portal. So midwives they are the keepers of the land from beyond and the land the land from the past and the land into the future. They are the portal of the dead into the land of the living. So Tlahtecutli is an amazing example of how entheogenic plants, and not only the use of them, but the knowledge of them and the teaching of them, were intertwined with motherhood midwifery since time immemorial, since 6,000 years. And it reminds me that this is nothing new. This is just a fad right now. But most of us, we're just reclaiming the truth of our ancestry and the truth of what we know. So, I had such a profound and helpful experience with a lot of these earth medicines, like even coca. Coca, my dad was a cocaine addict, and that destroyed so much of my childhood, moving from house to house and, having money just like get zapped out. And, it was really a struggle to just not be there for his addiction because he died when I was 13. So, I didn't know fully really the way he was suffering. And I wish I could have been there for him more. Now I know he's, graduating and healing on the other realms through the healing work that we're doing as a family. But, I wish I could have shown him some of these medicines in person. And I feel like he would not have suffered the way he did because he came from trauma too. And so, coca is the base plant, coca leaf, right? And a constituent of coca is cocaine, right? And so when you bring coca or mambe into your body, cocaine is in there, a very small amount. But what you also have is the great symphony of alkaloids and other constituents of the plant that give you a profound benefit, right? And so the same thing with these other medicines like hape, kambo, psilocybin producing mushrooms, ayahuasca, and other DMT like bufo. there's so many other constituents in these plants aside from, the parts that produce a hallucination. And so because of this like big family of plants that I've gotten to know, and we build relationships with them. Mother Ayahuasca has a completely different personality, and so does grandfather tobacco. And they all work so beautifully in a harmonic, and that actually keeps us from becoming addicted. It's like only going to one of your family members' houses and not seeing the rest of them, but when we come and we foster this relationship with all of them, we could have a great big party of the soul, and touch in at times and connect with their spirit, even without ingesting them. So when I became pregnant, I asked myself truthfully, why would I ever want to discontinue? Why, if it's brought me so far here in the happiest I've ever been in my whole life, why is it time to stop now? And so the research is slim, girl. Like, that's why it's so important to talk about this, is because all of the articles that are online, it's not safe, don't do it. It's not safe, don't do it. And I'm like, yo, that's it. Like, we're just gonna just say that and wrap it up. Like, where are we getting the information from? Where is that coming from? So I looked to the science and the spirit. I was like, all right, what's the research? What has been done to let us to this conclusion? And there is one, well, I guess the word would be like, it's always cited. Like, that's the body of research that is always cited when we make the determination whether psilocybin is safe for pregnancy. It was a botched research project at best for a number of reasons. And I always talk about this during my presentation, is basically the whole research project can be inconclusive at best, that it doesn't determine anything beyond psilocybin and passes through the blood-brain barrier, ends up in the fetal tissue, and is processed slower than it is in the mother. And that's all we know. That's not any words on safety. That's not any words on fatality. And that's mostly the issue people have is, am I going to condemn my child to develop mental disorders or mood disorders or neurological conditions? That's what most of the women want to know. They're just trying to be good moms. They just want to make sure that their babies are going to be safe. And all we have is this one piece of data that just says it ends up in the fetal tissue, and because of that, don't do it. And yet, when there's studies going on, pregnant women and breastfeeding women are written out. We are screened out, and we're not part of the conversation, or they don't want to study us, or they don't want us to participate. And not only that, they even recommend that women go on hormonal birth control if they are not already pregnant in order to do this study, because of the risk of getting pregnant while they're studying them. So there is like this complete fear around what happens when fetuses and young children come in contact with psilocybin. And so when I learned that that was the science, then I went to the spirit, and then I went to my teacher, Chikwa Sochi, and I asked her, through my friend, I needed a translator. And I asked her, I'm pregnant, but I still want to be in ceremony. I still need this very much for my soul. And so how can I do it in a right way and in a good way? And they do what's called abuela dosing, which is a microdose essentially. But she dosed me for my first time at 3 months with the ananankat. And the ananankat being, the psilocybin mushrooms, but they're very mild. They're like a psilocybin mexicana. So they're not as hallucinogenic, but they're still psilocybin producing mushrooms. And when I asked her, what is the cultural context for this in Wirarica culture with children in psilocybin, they're called los niños, los niños de agua, like the little children of the water. And children go pick the mushrooms because they are the purest form of life, that they do not taint the mushrooms. So children and psilocybin have always been together, particularly in this culture. And my abuela was dosed at 3 years old, was the first time she ever had her first dose. And that was given to her by her abuela. And she continued to educate me and tell me, all of her pregnancies have had psilocybin as a part of them. So, these are just cultural differences. Like the anxiety that's in the Western science to remove families from medicine, from, plant medicine, is so palpable in the way that they treat pregnant women during these studies. And yet, I have a lineage teacher where she goes back into her culture for thousands of years, and there are no prescriptions made to deter pregnant women from ingesting psilocybin. So I had to take those things into account when I made my decision. And I'm glad that I made the decision I made, because I was able to potentially prevent postpartum depression, not just treat it when it was happening, but instead bring forward, like I said, not just harm reduction, but optimize the benefit of, a pregnancy and a birth. So I'm a big advocate, especially for women who struggle with postpartum depression, because psilocybin has an amazing way of allowing us to be reflexive and to look at our trauma from a safe place, to understand it and send a lot of compassion, and to be present for our children. There's a great network of sisters that are finally coming together, creating safe places for each other to speak on this very subject. So, we will be a part of the conversation. It's not a matter of if. I mean, it's a matter of will they, listen to us, because it's currently happening.
Wow. Wow. I actually feel like a lot of emotion coming up listening to you speak. This is brand new information for me. And yeah, I mean, I'm preparing to have a pregnancy in the next year, and this level of conversation and preparing myself and understanding and like you say, learning and conversing with others who have done it and who can take us out of the medical model and back into a more rooted ancestral model, that we can learn from different cultures, different heritages that have been working in this way or have the wisdom there. So this is beautiful, and I'm just really excited to be able to share this with more pockets of women so we can get a further conversation moving. And I mean, we touched this now on postpartum. So for breastfeeding mothers, again, this is a question I've had. I've had women come to me asking me, is it safe to microdose while I'm breastfeeding, suffering with some postpartum depression? And again, it's really difficult to find any information to share with them.
It is really difficult to find information, because at this point, it we're relying on each other to feel safe enough to come out and speak our story, and it's kind of a scary thing sometimes. I'm an educator on, IG, on Instagram, and I also post some things about it on TikTok. And those videos, anytime I discuss psilocybin, breastfeeding children, it's instantly banned, instantly flagged and taken down. So, I mean, I really commend all the mothers that are coming to the front lines. My sister Nohea, who was just on Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith and the Smith family, and that was huge for her to be up as a mother who, takes plant medicine on like national television. That was huge to see her come and rise up to that. And microdosing mom is one of them, and I'm reminded of another sister, Microdose NYC. They're a Black woman and also on the spectrum as well. And so that's a very interesting intersection to be in, and also has, a child, and put together some slides about, breastfeeding and microdosing. And not just the conversation is not just about microdosing. It's also about macrodosing. I get a lot of questions about that too. Microdosing's just playing in the puddles, you know what I mean? And some of us, we sit in ceremony and our breasts like get engorged because we're away from our babies. And then what do we do? Do we just squeeze all the milk out and throw it away? No. That's liquid gold. I mean, we've produced that and created that, and I feed it to my son. And I have a smart, bright, energetic, hilarious, happy, mischievous ass toddler. And that's, um, they're not going to know a brain that's any different. You know what I mean? Even in the Bwiti tradition, where iboga is a plant that's part of the cult and the culture, a lot of children are conceived in a psychedelic space. So from the moment, that these souls have been in relationship with these medicines. So when it comes to breastfeeding, like if you've already had psilocybin while you're pregnant, like what's the difference? Like where does it change? Like really what happens is it actually gets synthesized in a really beautiful way and delivered into the breast milk in a far greater complexity than just giving your child psilocybin mushrooms. So I think it's actually a really great introduction to psilocybin for some children. If that's the path you're going to take and you're going to, introduce them to this medicine early on in life and, have that choice, then what a wonderful introduction to it for them. And all this to say, it's completely criminal to even do that and to say that. And that really saddens me a lot is, we don't bat an eyelash at SSRIs in the breast milk or, muscle relaxers or anything like that, even caffeine. But the LD 50, which is the lethal dose of psilocybin, like how much pure psilocybin you would need to kill like a population, it's a scientific way of determining acute toxicity, is one of the lowest of any of the chemicals that we regularly take in. Aspirin, sugar, caffeine, opiates, they all have much, much higher. The only one that's safer is mescaline. So that's the San Pedro cactuses, and that's the peyote, which are the peyote cactus is also a very motherhood friendly medicine. It's even said that it helps to strengthen the placenta, and the umbilical cord is stronger in the presence and also helps with breast milk production. So, not only are we talking how do we do harm reduction? So, if a person is concerned in your audience about breastfeeding and microdosing or just dosing in general, although I do love the occasional like beautiful mother with her baby breastfeeding at ceremony. I've seen that a few times before, and it's absolutely astounding and wonderful and brave and beautiful. If a person is really concerned about that, 6 to 24 hours is usually about a window where anything that you eat will be delivered into the breast milk. So if you feel like that's an ultimate concern and you're not ready to introduce psilocybin into your children's life in that way, then I would never recommend pumping and dumping, because what you've created is pure gold. So put it on your face, put it in your bath, put it in their bath, use it on their skin, still have that be a part of the way you relate to your child, feed it to your plants, whatever you want to do. But, there's no reason to throw it out. There's nothing toxic about that. So for those of us that are coming to understand, maybe there's a possibility that it's not just not dangerous, but could be beneficial even. That's what we're learning now, is we've broken through, oh my God, I'm so scared, I want to avoid it, and I don't know what it's going to do. And now we're going back and saying, maybe actually this is part of how you develop a healthy person. And that seems and feels a little bit new for our culture. Because as you said, we've been like anglicized, you know what I mean? And it's really sad because like we wonder why so many kids suffer, why a 12-year-old would want to take their own life. And maybe it's because they haven't had the opportunity to grow with a medicine that really is a good fit for them.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much in there around rites of passage and you, the connection to the earth medicines that have been put here for us too, that have actually very likely been the central fuel in our evolution. And this is just a new level to the conversation. And I mean, I'm so grateful that you have and these other women are being so brave in speaking about this, because I can imagine, even for me coming forward with this, I was having to think, oh, how will this be received and how will people view this? And then I had to just sit with my body, and what does my body feel? What does my gut feel? My heart feel? And it just feels pure excitement. It feels joyful. It feels curious. And there's nothing bad there at all. So this is really powerful, powerful work.
And thank you for opening up this level of discussion in your platform, because I've shopped around, my presentation to a number of different people of notoriety. I've offered, to do workshops on psilocybin years ago, 5, 6 years ago, and have been turned down a lot by organizations I thought would be open to it, or people that just said, I don't know if people are ready for that, or, oh, isn't that illegal? We can't talk about that. So it's a beautiful dawn. It was even honestly just a couple weeks ago that I wanted to develop and put together, a summit of some of these mothers that I've mentioned. And around decolonizing motherhood and reclaiming our entheogenic, relationships. And I shopped it to some like bigger accounts and was like, do you want to come in? They seemed really interested at first, but then I think when it really settled in and they were like, I have to make a stand on plant medicine right now, and I don't know if I feel comfortable with that. Like, they just ghosted us. So even now, within even progressive communities, there is a lot of internalized oppression, you know? And part of indigenizing ourselves is to really not use the colonizer's view as a marker of our value, worth, or where we should be situating our time and energy. So, thank you again for allowing this conversation and for welcoming it with open arms on this platform, because the more we get it out, the more we tell good stories and we shine it in a good light. And not just, hey, look at how well behaved and scholarly and all these things that are markers of a good citizen in our society. Oh, look at that, they must be okay, right? But instead, like, to foster and to encourage and to see the bravery, the intelligence, the animal nature, the wildness in our children still, and to like use different value systems to determine what a valuable life is. You know what I mean? Like, I've worked for places that, feel like face piercings are just like way too over the top. But it's like, I see people that are coming back to their face tattooing ways, to their having the big earlobes, to completely indigenizing the way that they even present themselves in the world. And by you doing this and by me doing this, we are indigenizing the way that we live upon the face of the earth, brave as hell, and knowing, despite the odds and despite what people are telling us around us, oh, you should be really careful, you better watch out, you shouldn't talk about that, you have a baby. And it's like, someone needs to do it. So, thank you for welcoming me. I really appreciate this time we've shared, and I hope that we're able to create more in the future.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, this is only the beginning of a very long conversation between you and I'm very, very excited to make your acquaintance today and to see where we where we flow together. So thank you. It's been beautiful. This was, like I said, I've been really, I told, been telling everybody I'm so excited to speak to you and to hear what you have to say. And now it's just really happy that we can put this out there with this podcast. So thank you, Mikaela.
And thank you so much, Kathy. And this is just one small piece, as you said, of a very large conversation around what I like to call mushroom consciousness, and it's that intersection of entheogens and people that align with womb principles. I don't think you even need to have a womb or be a woman or identify in this way in order to tune in, with the cyclical nature of life and the messiness of of nature and all of what comes with being, a magical being in a womb situated way. And so, this healing with the psilocybin is so congruent, like it's so symbiotic with doing womb work and working through the ancestor lines in the intelligence that lives inside of our belly. So I cannot wait to continue opening up the possibility for just more sharing, more seamless and boundaryless fusions of knowledge and wisdom and information. That's what the mycelial network does. It's the great internet of nature, And so for us to be able to share and proliferate this consciousness movement that is, as you said, rooted spiritually, in the earth and in the web of life. The womb is the portal in and out. um it's the ultimate gate, the gateway through dimensions. And so to be able to carry it, to nurture it, psilocybin is a serotonin regulator, so it's phenomenal with working with the hormone system, which we really need to learn how to heal and balance. So it's a perfect medicine for people in a womb consciousness and people who have these wombs, and people even who have had hysterectomies. So, I definitely don't want to forget that if any of your audience isn't really a mom yet, or even considering having a mother or having a child and becoming a mother, but learning how to balance the mechanics of a womb, psilocybin can be such a helpful medicine, even for coming into, better regulated menses, to help your bleeding time and to be able to listen to what your womb is trying to tell you, because that's actually the rich soil from which healthy babies can come from, is a healthy, happy, balanced womb, body, mind, spirit, community, ecology. So that's a huge piece as well. So thank you for holding space for that piece too, because I know a lot of us aren't ready to embark on that big journey into motherhood just yet. But just know that, you are mothering a portal. You are mothering a body that really needs you right now. So psilocybin can help with that as well. But with that, I'm complete. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mikaela. Honor. Yes. Okay.